Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Sunday talk within the Nine-Sided Circle. I am your host, Noor Kyle.
And I am her faithful sidekick, Mushtaq Ali.
Yes, and we would like to welcome you back if you've hung out with us before, and if you are new, thank you for joining us. Thank you for popping in and sitting through this lovely time that we spend together each week, every Sunday at 6:30 p.m. Pacific time, hanging out on Zoom. So, a bit of a YouTube spiel. Of course, if you're watching this replay, you're going to be watching it on YouTube, and we want to say welcome to you as well. Thank you for being here. And if you'd like to support the work that we do, there are a few ways that you can do that. You can, of course, subscribe to our channel. You can like this video if you enjoy it. And as Mushtaq says, even if you don't, just want to be charitable, you can do that. You can leave a comment, whether it's to us or in reply to someone else. Maybe you have some answers to their questions or some interesting questions for them to their answers. In any case, we definitely enjoy respectful dialogue in our comments, so you are welcome to participate in that. Also, we do one-on-ones and two-on-ones. So if you're looking for some more personal support on your such stereotypical language, your journey to being an adult, to being an awake adult. We are here and happy to help you out. Just reach out to us, send us an email if you want to ask us any questions in advance. Otherwise, you can book a session right from a link in the description. And we have other links there as well. You can also send us a donation if you want to support us on that level, which we very much appreciate since this is our livelihood. This is what we do. We do these live talks and we do our one-on-one sessions from time to time. Politics permitting, we do retreats as well. So we always like to keep you guys updated on what's going on with that. No news currently, but we miss you. We would love to get out in the world sooner rather than later. So, anything I'm missing, Mushtaq?
I don't think so.
All right. So, yeah, check out our links in the description. That's how you join our Facebook group as well as our email list. Those are the things that I forgot. T-shirt, maybe. All of those things. Check them out. Anyway, onward. So, our topic for this evening was inspired by a question or two, maybe even three, that came up in our
Mostly
group
one.
chat. Yes. And this question was about the awakening of the heart. This is a very classic, at least English, Sufi phrase. So we wanted to delve into that and explore what that has meant, broadly speaking, and what we mean by that when we hear or use that phrase. How do we interpret that phrase? So that's what we will be exploring this evening. Ah, and it's an important question because this topic comes up so frequently. It's very classic Sufiness to be talking about the opening of the heart, listening to the heart, grounding in the heart, acting in a heart-centered way. All of these phrases kind of orbit this idea of having an awake heart, awakening the heart. So we wanted to touch in on that and make sure that to see what kind of clarity, rather, we might be able to offer. What are your thoughts, Mushtaq? Your opening thoughts?
Do I have any opening thoughts? I think that this subject may be one of the most abused subjects in Sufism and in spiritual practices in general. That's my opening thought.
Hmm. I think that's fair to say because it's a great cliche when you come right down to it. This idea of being heart-centered, acting from the heart space, all of these phrases many of us have heard in, the spiritual marketplace, as it were. And it's like buzzy. They're like buzz phrases.
Yeah, they're specifically designed to punch all of your dopamine buttons,
Hmm.
make you feel really good, and not to say anything. Saying, follow the path of the heart tells you exactly zero. So what does that mean, follow the path of the heart? What does it mean, awaken the heart? And some people have suggested that your heart will actually start saying, Allah, Allah, Allah. And I'm here to tell you, I have listened to literally thousands of hearts working over a decade as a nurse. You listen to hearts every day. And I have never heard one of them say anything other than lub dub, or some variation of that. And so that has to be a metaphor, not a reality. Human beings are great at recognizing patterns even when they don't exist. I mean, we're really good at recognizing patterns. And if we don't see a pattern, we can make one. And it's easy to listen to a sound and imagine that we hear a word in it. But it doesn't mean anything. Another aspect of this whole awakening the heart is it tends to be incredibly dualistic. You talk about God over here, you over here, two separate things. And in the true awakening of the heart, in my opinion, which is only my opinion, there is no two. There is no Dana, there's only Zool.
That a deep cut?
That is me probably dating myself a little bit.
Yeah, there is this hard lean into separateness in a lot of the languaging, isn't there?
Yes.
I noticed that when I did a little bit of preliminary noodling around on the internets to see how people were talking about this. And there is that, it's almost like a reinforcement of separation. And there is something very poetic and inspiring about the feelings that come up around love and longing and the pain of separation. And all of these are classic Sufi tropes. But one thing that I keep in mind is that the path of Sufism is intended to be a path, and there are steps along the way. There are ways in which we begin that journey, and along the way, our relationship to the path, our experience of the path changes over time. And speaking for myself personally, I remember how the pain of separation, the longing, the love sickness morphed into something else, something less based in separateness.
Less soppy, as I like to say.
So how do we account for that? Does that mean that the emotion, the connection, the loving connection has dissipated and gone away? I think in some people's minds they may experience that way, but I believe personally that they would be missing the mark on that.
Yeah. Love is another one of those words that is very, very abused. I mean, how many times have you been uh, walking through the spiritual marketplace and you'll hear somebody say, "Oh, we follow the path of the heart. We want a path with heart. And we know that we have the path of the heart when we feel love. And we feel love so deeply that we want to move towards the object that we love." Right? You've heard shit like that. And that's all bullshit. I will give you an axiomatic statement. Behavior is truth, and love is behavior. If you think about it, even though English turns the word love into a an abstract noun, it's not. Love is a verb. Love is behavior. And it doesn't matter what kind of feelings you have to be able to see the behaviors that say love or not love. When I was in college, the college that I did my undergraduate work in did a play of the Ballad of Reading Jail. Y'all know that? Anybody know that? Okay. There was an Irish
Okay,
poet.
Todd's
Oscar
with you.
Wilde.
Todd's with you.
Yes, Oscar Wilde. Thank you. I
And
know Todd will know it. He's as much of a geek as I am. But so Oscar Wilde was gay and he got thrown into jail for being gay. And while he was in there, he wrote this poem called The Ballad of Reading Jail.
never.
And it got turned into a very interesting play. And there was a refrain within the play that happened over and over again about this guy who was going to be executed, to be hung, and for killing his girlfriend. And the refrain was, he killed her because he loved her. And that phrase played over and over again through this play. And it stuck with me. Even then, even when I was a callow youth, I thought to myself, how can you kill what you love? So obviously, whatever the label he put on his feeling was, the behavior was not love. So,
Or at least it should be obvious. Let's put it that way.
yeah, it should be.
You read this thing and it should be apparent to you that the words do not reflect the actions.
So, what can that tell us about opening the heart?
Mm. Okay, Ian. A trivial nitpick, but reading is actually pronounced reading. Fair enough.
No, it's not true because the English do not know how to pronounce the English language.
Let me slightly correct what I said. In England, that town is called Reading.
Got it. Okay.
And I actually appreciate that because I've actually never heard it spoken in the vernacular.
All right. So back to
I
Michelle.
actually, I actually had a girlfriend from there once.
Mm,
Didn't last long, but
memorable enough. Yeah. Okay, so back to Mushtaq's question. Opening the heart.
Yeah. So what can that mean? It doesn't mean anything physical. I mean, if somebody opens your heart physically, Either they are a surgeon trying to save your life, or they are a criminal trying to steal your money. Does that make sense? This is not talking about a physical transformation.
Nancy offers maybe the heart needs to be connected to the moving center. We're leaping
Maybe,
into the Gurdjieffian stuff already, huh?
yeah. Maybe the heart center needs to be connected to the intellectual center as well. Maybe nothing really opens until all three are connected. Now there's a thought. But what does that mean? You've all heard us say this before. Emotion is nothing more than a feeling that you have in your body that you tell yourself a story about. People have been trying to describe love forever, since the first proto-human had the experience of loving something. And whether they said ook ook or let me not to the marriage of true minds admit impediment, they all fall short. So if the opening of the heart, the awakening of the heart has to do with love, what does it have to do with? I'll give you a hint. It doesn't have to do with anything that makes you give some dumbass dude who tells you that he knows the secrets any money. It's not a money exchange.
No love offerings? No?
No, no love offerings.
Diva?
Okay. I'm not real sure how to say this, but like so tomorrow morning I'm going to my volunteer job where I walk dogs, and there's just something special about you look at the dog and they look at you, and you just have this exchange of energy. It's like you recognize something in them. And it's the same when you're out walking and you say hi to somebody. There's just this exchange of energy. And I don't know, I always feel it in my heart. And I just think that's, the kids, even when they're being bad, if you can like respect them as people, and you just see something in them, life. I need somebody to help me
You're not far off, though.
explain that better. I'm not able to explain it, but it's a feeling.
Mm.
I would suggest it's more than a feeling, but yes, it starts as a feeling.
A connection.
Yeah. So let us take as a hypothesis for a moment the concept that love is behavior. You don't have to believe it, just take it as a hypothesis. And we can test that. How do you know if someone loves you? Do they beat you up? Do they uh, manipulate you? What do they do? And it's a
They show
doing.
you.
They show you by their action, by their behavior.
Yes, love is behavior. This is what we take as axiomatic. That means it is doing, not talking. Anybody can say words, but behavior is truth and love is behavior. The whole idea of behavior as truth is very simple. Anybody can say anything, but what they do is what matters.
Todd says, is that Anne Rice you're talking
That's
about,
Anne
Todd?
Rice, yeah.
Okay. Anne Rice's one great line, beware the word divorced from the flesh. Yes. Yes, yes. Good quote. Shuri.
I'm currently reading a book called See What You Made Me Do, and it's about domestic abuse. And they changed the phrase in this country from domestic violence because a lot of abuse doesn't even have a physical component. And it's about the manipulation, and it's about the coercion, and it's about uh, deceiving somebody into creating a connection that they feel they can't let go because they feel that, but I love you, so I have to stay and accept the controlling behavior. And it's quite a confronting book to read because I can only read a few pages at a time, and I'm just gobsmacked at, what people do. And it's not just men to women, it can be
Oh, yeah,
anybody.
it can be
Anybody.
women to men just
Anybody.
as easily as it can be men to women.
Both sides, yeah. And you just think, wow, when you're talking about behavior, I feel love response is sometimes you respond to the person that you're interacting with, even if you don't want to. I'm not talking about abusive relationships. So it could be my mum and she wants me to do something and I don't really want to do it, but I thought she needs this help. She needs this. And I have to put the things that I want to priorities down and attend to her. So when I'm loving somebody and I'm looking at a bigger picture, I'm thinking about the things that I want to respond to them have no strings. I keep telling myself, like, you're not waiting for them to reciprocate, which is another thing about love. Love is that unconditional, that you see the suffering that's right in front of you and you do something about it, even when you're busy, even when you've got things that are pressing on you. There's this urge, I think, to make it a bit better for them or to ease them, and how to make it fit into your life. Love is not a comfortable, fluffy, feel good thing. It makes you do things that you have to give yourself a bit of a slap to get going. Because I was actually asked to clean my mum's granny flat for her birthday. That was her request from me as her gift. And I had to sit there for an hour with her, just talking to her. And I said, I really want to know exactly what you want me to do, which things you want me to concentrate on. And she goes, what are you doing? And what I was actually doing, I was mustering the energy to do this cleanup because I was like, oh my God, it was big. But I did it. And I just thought, not only did I have to muster the energy, I had to muster the right attitude. The attitude of giving and doing something could not be stained by my own stroppiness, my own discomfort, my own whatever. The selfish human behavior that was going, oh my God, what is she doing that for? Why is she collecting all of this? Why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? But if I did that with my gift, it would really sour it. So I thought this is very important for me to be in that moment. I had to muster up the energy and I thought, right, we've got our list. Let's go. Let's do it. And she was just like, only you could do that, Sher. She said, no one else I could ask could do this. And it's not that others couldn't, but it's that whole thing. She knows that if she asks, she feels really terrible that she's imposed upon them. And with me, we have a connection, we have a deep love connection. And I thought this was part of nourishing that too. And for me to be awake in that moment, not to sour the gift in any way. And that was important to me. So that, as Mushtaq said, I have that sign up on my desk here: love is behavior, behavior is truth.
Yes.
Always there. And I look at it every day.
It's
What
such
am
a
I?
great shorthand. Yeah. It's such
Yeah.
a
Yeah. And
yeah.
I should tell everybody that I got the phrase love is behavior from a writer by the name of Andrew Vox.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Sadly, he has passed away because the world needs more people like him. Um, he wrote incredibly important work in the form of um, detective stories, for the lack of a better term. Most of it was about child abuse.
Which is, in line with what we were talking about earlier about how he, he was able to see so vividly what love is not.
Yeah. And so every time I say that, I think of him. He passed away a couple years ago, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I had some very interesting conversations with him. Yes. Read his books. They'll break your heart, but read them anyway.
Did someone else have themselves unmuted before? Okay.
So, what is the awakening of the heart? You're going to go, oh, you're always talking about that, but I'm going to tell you. And it is the awakening of conscience. The awakening of the heart is the awakening of conscience. Conscience gives you empathy. Conscience allows you to connect with the other. This goes back to what Diva was saying. Without that, you cannot love. If you think, oh, if here am I love Noor, therefore she should do these things for me.
Yes, as Alka said in the chat, if you love me, you will do this. She says that should be red flag behavior, and it would be.
It is.
If I do that to him, which I don't, if I had ever done that to him, I'm sure he would balk at that.
Oh yeah, I would call you out on it, but you have never ever done it. And I don't think I've ever done it to you.
Mm.
Unless maybe it was if you loved me, you'd wash the dishes.
It's like a joke,
Yes.
it's like a clear, playful banter kind of thing, as opposed to something said in earnest where it's meant to be a way to manipulate one or the other of us to do something just because the other person wants us to.
Except for dishes. Dishes are a different thing.
Yeah, well, shared labor, so it works out.
Yeah. So,
Nancy.
I ran across a thing. I'll put the video in the Facebook group afterwards. That
Okay.
might be a strong example. It's about working on peace between Israelis and Palestinians. And basically, what they need to do is sit and listen to each other and take it seriously. And they have to accept that they are causing each other's suffering. And it's rough, but I think it might be the real thing.
Thank you, Nancy. Definitely share that. I have seen a couple organizations like that who I admire their work because they're working so hard to get people to see the humanness in each other and act in accordance with that, which is a big ask at a time where people are so wounded. So, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, well, this is like a vivid description of what it's like to do the work.
Yeah.
Not just this is our project.
Yeah. Okay, great. I look forward to
Okay.
checking it out. Okay, so Todd has offered a link to one of Teal's favorite poems on the subject. This is The Glove and the Lions. I'm pulling it up now.
Especially
By,
especially the last stanza.
by Lee Hunt. The Glove and the Lions by Lee, Leigh Hunt. So maybe we can hold on to the link for that, but if people want to Google that, they can check that out. Okay. Thank you, Todd. And I think Cherie has a question. The last couple lines you said of the poem. I will definitely have to take some time to read that and give it the focus it is due. That will be a treat for later. Cherie asks, is there a degree of shame to consciousness? Do you want to say a little bit about what's on your mind there, Cherie?
To ignore a need, you have to push down what pricks you, what motivates you to actually respond, not just the love of being conscious, but you know that you'd be a bit embarrassed or something about not responding to that prick, that opening, that motivation.
What comes to my mind is something that has a little bit to bit of what we were talking about with self-observation in
And
that sense
a
of
big question first. When you say, is there a degree of shame to consciousness? Do you mean consciousness or conscience?
Probably conscience.
That's what I thought.
yeah.
If we go off on the first, it will get us out in the weeds somewhere.
Okay, yeah, I should clarify that I was thinking about it in terms of conscience, but
Good.
it's good to
Mm.
be clear on what we mean. So if we are in a position where conscience has begun to be active within us to a small degree or a large degree, when we see others in pain or discomfort of some kind, the potential is there for us to feel that within ourselves. And it might be like the prick of either mirroring or of a sense of being aware that there is suffering that you could do something about. And sometimes that takes the form of guilt, shame.
Yeah, but if it does, it's off the mark.
It can be, yes. I think if it starts there, we have to be mature enough to not get stuck there. But anyway, Mushtaq, you may have thoughts on this, so maybe you can be clear.
Yeah. Shame and guilt are very, very low level emotions, and they really have no place in conscience. Conscience is affirmative. So if my conscience is active, then I have empathy and compassion for the people around me. And the closer the people are, the more so that is. I mean, there is nobody I can think of that I have more empathy with than Noor, for instance. And that informs my choices. And it's not a question of, will I feel bad if I don't do this? It's, if I do this, will it enhance her life? Will it make her life better in some way? Will she feel better, happier, more cared for? These things. Will she know she's loved? It sounds kind of soppy, but I don't mean it like soppy.
I know you don't mean it by soppy. So I was also thinking about, so this is me, and this is a homeless person. This cup is a homeless person. And the more distance I have between that person, the easier and quicker it is to be numb to their need.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah, you
part
turn
of me,
your conscience off.
yeah, that I didn't actually try and connect to that, so there's I guess there's the that balance of there is so much need out there, there is so
Yeah.
much suffering, so much everything.
And it is not your responsibility to end any of it.
That's right. So I was like, so the how much
Do you know
how
what most homeless people say about the people who walk by when they're on the street and like panhandling or whatever? You know what I hear over and over from them?
I hear that I wish they wouldn't ignore me. I'd be happy with a smile. I'd be happy with a little chat.
Yeah,
That
they walk by like I don't even exist.
I'm invisible.
To just bring it down into one phrase.
Mm,
And so it might not be that you can give every homeless person a buck,
mm,
but you can connect with them and acknowledge their existence, even if they're dirty, disgusting, half crazy, half drunk, you
mm,
know, you can witness them.
mm.
And that's hard for some people.
Thanks, Sherry. Alka, are you ready to share?
Um, I am going to the awakening of the heart is the awakening of the consciousness theme.
Not
Um,
consciousness, conscience.
no, not, oh, awakening of the conscience
Yes.
is okay, not consciousness. Okay. Um, but what I noticed, um, that it is, as an awake person, it is my responsibility to see what is the cup size or the ability for the other person to take. It
Mhm.
is my responsibility. If I give more than what they can take, that's it's on me. You're giving more than they can take. Like, to give you an example, I have a 2 liter of milk, and the other person's capacity is just 1 cup, as Sherry was showing a cup. And I am putting 2 liter of milk in that cup. The other person will say, bloody hell, you effed up my clothes, right? It's falling all over. They don't want that much left. Their capacity is only 1 cup.
Yeah, and that's important. I mean, your example is good. I'll give you a better one. You go down the street here in San Francisco and you find a homeless person and you give them $1,000. The odds are that person will be dead within a day, either from being robbed and killed or from a fentanyl overdose or the equivalent thereof.
So it's up to you as an awake person. It is your responsibility to first know what needs to be done.
Yes.
what's the capacity of the other person. And then you can't say, oh, I give so much and you just
Yeah,
a
that
thankless person.
There's
Right. Yeah.
definitely, yeah, there's a double-edged sword effect there where, as you were saying towards the end there, Alka, you have all these feel-good feelings about how much you give without realizing that you're just swamping the other person in a way that they don't receive, can't appreciate, and you're doing a disservice to both of you.
In fact, what that remaining love or milk, enjoy it. That's the self-love. That's what I'm learning. That's the self-love. Right? That's for you. You give what is needed and then give yourself.
Yeah, I think
I'm learning. I'm learning.
yes, the primary factor there for me is part of being awake is learning how to practice. Well, we know that being awake is simple. You're either, you know, intentionally, attentionally present or you're not. But from there, you take that and you develop some discernment. As you witness others, you witness who they are. You know, how can I learn what their needs are? How can I learn to respect them as universes unto themselves without, my nonsense about who they are and who I think they should be and what they need and my interpretations on all of that. So, yes, I think that's essentially what you're describing in shorthand, Alka, is figuring out how to do that, how to be discerning in that way. And the onus is on the person with the ability to do that to act appropriately in that way.
That's where the awakening comes in. Uh, I mean, I think it was Mustaq many moons ago was talking about help those who have an ability to be helped. Like, help those who really want to change. If you keep on giving your help to people who don't want to change, then you will drown with them. He said it much more eloquently. I'm just saying, but that's how I heard it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you drown with them. You know. So anyway, that's what I want.
Thank you, Alka. Yes. So, Nancy, you had some questions. You said, do you need to learn how much to give by making mistakes? You can learn by study or examples, but I don't see how mistakes can be absolutely avoided. I mean,
Probably not.
no, we're not omniscient. We can't read minds.
There may come
Mistakes.
a point where you have perfect conscience and total empathy and compassion. That point may get there. I myself am not there yet. Therefore, errors will occur.
That's the thing, though. Can we take ownership of that and act anyway to the best of our ability? Because that's a fact of life. Mistakes happen in everything we do. How do we learn? Yes, sometimes by way of making mistakes. Is that fair enough, Nancy?
Yeah.
So, Mushtaq, you had some interesting thoughts coming up around tying this idea of awakening of the heart back to the Sufi, the classical Sufi tradition.
I did?
Yeah, we talked about a Persian term.
Oh, yes. We were talking about Sahib-i Dil or
Yes.
Dal, depending on the language that you're speaking. In Farsi, Del is heart. Slightly different than qalb. Qalb is an Arabic loanword. And they use it sometimes the same, sometimes slightly different. Now, Sahib, it can mean master. You could look at this phrase and see mastermind. That's one way of translating it. I think it's the wrong way, but I've seen it translated that way. The oldest meanings that we can find from Sahib come from the Arabic, and it relates to companionship. So you could say companion of the heart. But it can, Del can represent emotions, affections, mind, heart, belly, gut, all of these things, depending on how it's used. So you could say that the awakening of the heart is learning to use the heart brain, what they call the heart brain, which would be, in Gurdjieff's terminology, the higher emotional center. And that's where conscience develops. Now, there's all sorts of things that the museum Sufis talk about. And that's like they'll say that the opening of the heart will lead to a more compassionate and loving nature. But what does that mean? What does it look like to have a more compassionate or loving nature?
We've been talking about some of what that looks like in practice already tonight.
Yeah. So you have a broken arm, and I reduce the fracture, and it hurts like hell. Is that a loving act? Because I've caused you pain. Reduce the fracture means that I've reset the bone, put them back together so that they can heal. Is that a loving act? Because I will tell you that it is a very unpleasant experience, especially if there's no anesthetics or painkillers or anything like that. If you're good at it, it's over pretty quick, but what if it's your first time ever reducing a fracture? Where is RM? RM, have you ever had to reduce a fracture?
Yes, I was an intern when I had to basically I was under supervision and it was my ER rotation. It's definitely very painful for a patient, but once it was done, then patient was really grateful.
Yeah, because then they can heal. But were you angry with the patient when you reduced their fracture?
No, I was not. I just was I think because I was intern, I was just really worried that if he will be able to tolerate the reduction. I think more than angry, I was worried.
Yeah. Yeah, I would not expect you to be angry. And your worry is the care that you have for your patient, which in real world terms is a form of compassion. So here you are, and you know that what you're going to do is going to hurt, and it's going to hurt bad. And you do it anyway, and you accept that you're going to cause them pain. Remember when I said love is behavior? That's an example of love as behavior. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And it's a good example of how hard it can be when you're worried and you're scared and you're wondering, am I doing the right thing? In a particular scenario like that, where you have to touch someone's body and you know that it is going to hurt for them. But you both enter into that act together with the sense that the outcome is desirable. Yes. RM says we have to show tough love in medicine. Yes.
It's true. And you have to be able to do all sorts of things that you don't want to do. And this is not just in medicine, but in life in general.
Mm-hmm.
But those things can be loving things.
Boundaries.
Yeah.
Creating boundaries for your well-being and the other person's.
So, how do you develop conscience? And I will tell you that developing conscience is the act of awakening the heart.
Yeah.
It works like this.
Thought.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Mushtaq. I know you're gonna.
Yeah. Conscience leads to empathy. Empathy leads to compassion. Compassion leads to connection. And the ultimate connection is the connection with the divine reality. That's how you get there. Anybody who tells you any different is trying to sell you something. It's also stolen from The Princess Bride.
Would you repeat that again? Empathy.
Yes. To develop conscience, you must develop empathy. Empathy leads to compassion. Compassion leads to connection. And when you can connect, the ultimate connection is the connection to the divine reality. I should say, actually, sympathy leads to empathy. Empathy is the ability to feel with someone. Sympathy is feeling for someone. And one of the things that you ask is what effect will this behavior have on a given person?
It seems to me that it's very much a question of evaluating potential outcomes.
Yes, that's part of a very important process.
Well, that's where the intellectual part of it comes in, right? You do have this aspect of feeling emotion, and you do have this sense of, analysis intellectually as well. Yes, our motherhood is a great example of it.
Yes. And either you develop that stuff or your baby dies. Hopefully you have not had that experience, but in my field of medicine, uh, you run across a lot of really damaged people, and you run across some people who have no conscience in a very literal sense. And some of them gave birth to somebody. And oftentimes, because of that lack of empathy and compassion and connection, that baby becomes completely ignored, abused, often killed, shaken to death for crying too much, left out, exposed to the elements, ignored, starved, all of these things. It's very unpleasant to think about. Motherhood, if nothing else, should develop compassion and connection. It's what it's supposed to do. We are, as a species, hardwired for that. And there are less of us that are than were 100 years ago, it seems to me. So, developing a conscience is understanding RM says, this reminds me of some alcoholic cases during my training. They harm themselves and others. Absolutely correct.
Yeah.
And that goes to my contention that alcohol is an anti-evolutionary drug. So, in order to truly develop conscience, all three centers have to be working together. This is where the fourth way comes in. So, what are the centers? You have the moving center, which is divided into three parts. The moving part of the moving center, the instinctive part of the moving center, and the sexual part of the moving center. You have the heart center, which is divided into two parts. The the emotional center and the higher emotional center, the heart center, higher heart center. The higher heart center is what we're looking for. It is literally the ability to see, to experience connection and empathy and compassion with the other, not some soppy feeling of sympathy, not where the only reason you feel bad for the little doggy lying in the street is because you relate it to you, but you feel bad for the doggy lying in the street in its own right. And you have the intellectual center and the higher intellectual center. And the thinking center as it is all well and good, but it's the higher thinking center, the higher intellectual center that we want. And that has to do with the ability to foresee things, to understand consequences. When all three of these things, all three of these centers are working together in the ways that they need to, you begin to develop conscience. When you develop conscience, you have the transformation of the heart. The heart opens. And you need to do this either from the bottom up or from the heart outward, but never from the intellectual center downwards. Old Sufi teaching that I just made up right now. No, seriously, old Sufi teaching.
So why is that? What's the taboo there, or the mistake that would be made there?
When you move from the head down, you lack the sentiment that is needed for actually feeling empathy. So if you move from the moving center upward, your body resonates with others, and you can begin to develop a little empathy that way. If you move from the heart outward, it informs both of the other centers.
So analysis is good. Too much,
Too
not
much,
so good.
not so much. Yeah. You cannot rely on it without the other two aspects. And this is a place where so many spiritual paths go wandering off into the woods. There's a great spiritual teacher, one of the most wonderful human beings I've ever met. And he said something that used to drive me crazy every time he said it, which is, if you're thinking, you're stinking. It's what you feel that's real. And yeah, he wanted to get people into their heart, but to discount the intellectual center is like tying one arm behind your back and never using it. You need both hands for a lot of tasks, and your feet.
Yeah, because the body has a role to play here too. That's where the action is, right? That's how we are able to make change in the world. To take the things that we feel in our head and have puzzled out in our minds and act on.
Yeah. And a lot of things don't work for this. You can take your tasbih and you can recite Ya Wadud 1,000 times a day, every day of your life. Ya Wadud means, oh, most loving. And you're not going to be any more loving. Your heart is not going to open from that. Eventually, you'll go to sleep behind it.
You'll have some good feels.
Maybe have some good feels. But one actual experience of the quality of Wadud will transform you. And you don't get that from empty ritual. And you don't get that from speaking Arabic. Arabic's a great language. It can say things that other languages can't say, which is true of most languages. But there's no magic in it. Or if there is, it's not the kind of magic we talk about. So you can say "Ya Wadud," you can say "Oh, most loving," um, any language that you want, any way that you want, and it will do exactly the same for you, which is either everything or nothing. So next time you're out walking down the street and you walk past the homeless people, look at them, nod to them, smile at them. They might try and hit you up for money. And also use your discernment, because some of these people you don't want following you home.
Yes, James.
Something that bugged my conscience, and this is when we were in India, and we'd got on that sort of minibus thing to collect everyone. And I think we'd only just left Alcas, and we were at some intersection somewhere, and this young girl holding a child was banging on my window. And I sort of felt no qualms about ignoring her. But then as we moved off, she then stepped back and just waved at me, and I still ignored her. And at that moment, I felt a real twinge of conscience. I felt I really could have just waved back like a civilized human being. And that stayed with me.
Yeah, so you learned something.
I could have, yeah. It's but I also have a question about head and heart center. So I've said how the intellect can't do it. You can't start with that. But then I think of other, and this way maybe a center has different levels or whatever. Um, Adyashanti often teaches an awareness practice that starts in the head ostensibly, but that's the head as awareness, view, and then sinks into the heart.
The only reason that you think awareness is in your head is because that's where your eyeballs are.
Hmm,
If we were to implant your eyeballs in your chest, you would think awareness was in your chest.
fair enough. But I just wondered because I'm still, we're going to talk about the centers. So the head center, does it have like lower intellectual, high intellectual, those kind of divisions?
It does.
Could that correspond, one of those divisions correspond with Jashanti's idea of the sort of view, the non-dual view is in the head, but it has to sink down, connect with the heart, or
I would
come.
say the true non-dual view is
Hmm.
in all of the centers at once.
Fair enough. Okay.
Because otherwise, if it's in the head, you're just thinking about it, or
Yeah.
you're making uh, a kind of image of it, or
Mm.
a model of it.
Hmm.
But the model is not the thing. The map is not the territory.
Mm.
You have to be able to experience it on all levels. And that's a little bit more difficult.
Mm. Okay. Thanks.
Any other thoughts or questions? Sure, he's good. You've been quiet. Do you have any thoughts?
Where do we
What's
where
that?
do we start? Where do this is this is such a important and central conversation for truly understanding our own center and being centered in our beingness. The question of love and how from the most superficial level to the most deepest spiritual level, it can be, like with anything, I guess, taken in any which way. But what we want, I guess, is to center us in a way where we're functioning as that human being, the true human being, that's a complete human being, integrated, in complete, not perfect, complete.
Mm-hmm.
And for that, centering in love is crucial. But then being lost in the definitions of what love is, because so many people think it's a feeling. A lot of attachment is considered as love, where it's just attachment stuff, and that can turn into behavior. I remembered a poem as you were explaining. I remembered a poem from Rumi where he actually asks love and says, tell me the truth. Tell me the truth. What are you? And love replies and says, I am the everlasting life. I am the reoccurring joy of living. I am the reoccurring joy of living. And that fits so well with what you said, Mushtaq, about the empathy, compassion, or sympathy, empathy, compassion, and connection.
Yes.
And when connection is the divine, then that vertical, then the horizontal can vibrate from that divine place. And sometimes the divine says no, and sometimes the divine says yes. Like you said about putting the arm back when it's broken back, settling it back in. It hurts. Sometimes you have to let go of what you claim you love. It hurts. Sometimes you have to accept into your life what you love being afar. Bringing them in hurts, or leaving them, that things, whatever. It can be to an object, to a flower, to a piece of fruit, to our body. And I don't think we can ever get it right unless we've got that divine connection centered in its place correctly, not in the clouds, but actually a lived experience love. That can only transpire into the horizontal plane of this earthly experience. And how do we get there? It's not through all the conceptual talkings of it, like you opened up the discussion today of, the path of love, we are all love, it's all about love. Not this romanticized way, because that only takes you to other dead ends. It's got to be, the truth. It's got to, and behavior is truth. That makes a lot of sense, but behavior could also be from all those other things. So which behavior is the truth? Which is the loving behavior? Culturally, it can change, individually it can change, but there must be a centered one, which is universal, which is that love.
Yeah, when I say behavior is truth, it means all behavior. If you behave in a particular way, that's the truth. If you behave in a loving way, that's the truth. If you behave in a hateful way, that's the truth. If you behave in an indifferent way, that's the truth.
Whatever's
Words
unholy in the hearing.
do not have to match,
Yeah.
and they often don't.
Like, then, therefore, whatever is opening up in the here and now, to be in the truth of this opening, and hence from here, what you see, what you do, just like that poem says, the reoccurring joy of living, that's opening up within any given moment, with any given person or thing, is the love. As what I guess conscience then comes in, to not act from the sleep place of what transaction you're going to get out of it, but to be in the awake state, and even whatever transaction is going on, to be aware of that, consciously aware of that, and allow what happening is happening without judgment, without grasping, without thinking of your own investments per se, but letting being be. Maybe that's how we should describe love, of letting life be, letting life, let live and let live. Not to be a victim and not to see a homeless person as a victim. There are many homeless that I've met who've chosen it. They don't like confined spaces. They don't like roofs and walls. And to respect that, to allow that, to not judge that as a loss. Maybe they're in the, like Ahmed Yesawi teaches us, be with those that are the strangers, the homeless, the poor, the weird, the
the weirdos.
yeah, the travelers, and there is a saying of someone saying someone in some official position sees a poor man sitting in a corner, maybe even homeless, a traveler, and says, "Why are you doing this? Why don't you get up and get yourself a job?" And then what he says, "Well, then you'll have this, and then you'll have that, and then what? And then you'll do this, and then you'll do that, and then what? And then you'll retire, and then you'll do this, and then what? And then you'll sit and relax." And he says, "Isn't that what I'm doing?" Right? So ultimately, to see that whoever is wherever they are is maybe exactly where they need to be. So let live, be truthful in your living, and let live without judgment or without trying to control. It's so hard to talk about this, Mushtaq and Noor, and everyone here, please, because then automatically the mind goes into, well, then are we going to just be passive, bystanders to everything? And that's not what this is meant. And I don't think that's not what any saintly guide is guiding us when they're inviting us into love. But you figure it out in the field. You can't keep conceptualizing about it. You got to be truthfully in the field, figuring it out, living it. And that means we're going to get hurt, or we're going to hurt others in the name of love. I don't know. This is what's come out now.
I mean, well put. I feel like you really tied it all together by saying it's really an in the field thing. I think we talked about this before. Like, you learn by practicing love. You really can only learn love by practicing it.
At one stage, holding your child to your bosom is the love. The next stage is to let it go so they can learn to crawl and walk. That means you got to take them off your lap.
Mm-hmm.
Then that becomes the love. And then the next love is to let them out into the strange world. Ask any mother leaving their child at the first preschool, coming home. Maybe not any mother, but in general, as a metaphor, love changes as well, depending on context and situation and time. And it's so many variants are happening. And so many definitions are being put on it. At the end of the day, Allah is love, and Allah is loving all the time. Whether in a war state, war-torn area, or a prosperous land. What does that any of that mean? Because it can easily shift the other way. And the word you said about Sahib-i Dil, Sahib-i Dil.
Dil, yes.
Dil, yes, Sahib-i Dil. Sahib in Turkish means ownership, right? So the owner of the heart. And the owner of the heart is not just the transactional owner, as I own this, kind of thing, but owner of the heart is also relational. My heart's owner is Allah, I can say. Or my heart's owner is, my beloved, my partner, my children. This house owns my heart, I can say, right? It can be relational. And who is the real owner of the heart? Well, anything that has a beginning and an end, if I make them the owner, either I'm going to leave or they're going to leave. And what's going to happen then of this heart, right? So if you give the heart up to one that has no beginning and has no end, the eternally bestowed one, that which we call Allah or God or divine or the ever living eternal one, well, then that is the highest of love can be expressed or felt. And we can claim it. Are we living it? It's another story, but at least we're on the path. They say of King Sulaiman or the Prophet Sulaiman, who saw an ant carrying a piece of water in its, I don't know what ants have. Do they have beaks? But carrying a drop of water and says, "Where are you going?" And he says, "I heard that they've thrown Ibrahim into the fire. I'm going to throw this water onto the fire." And and Solomon says, "By the time you get there, how's that even going to happen?" And he says, "Well, at least I'll die on the path." And I guess love is a bit like that. Like, we're not seeking it because we are that, but in trying to discover that we are, we die on that path. All is good. All is good then. We are in love. And let it unfold. A rose, when it's a bud, it's still a rose. When it's, in its most closed gonja, we say in Turkish, it's still a rose. And when it's in full blooming, it's a rose. And when it drops all its petals, it's a rose. It's a rose. Love is. We're all in love. And I guess the more we wake up our conscience, not just the conscious, but the conscience, gosh, I think that's going to be a new buzzword for us. I think really, as we're losing it more and more, we got to bring it in. We got to really flag that word a lot, bring the conscience back so empathy and sympathy can find their way to compassion.
Yes.
Thank you guys for this conversation. And I needed it. Thank you.
Yeah, I think we all did. So is there anybody that we haven't heard from? Amelia had to take off, but everybody else is still here.
Well, RM has I thought of another poem that people might want to look up. This is On Children by Khalil Gibran. So people can check that out as well. For the people who are wondering, I don't know if I have anyone to love in my life. I don't know if I have anyone to practice this with. Sometimes it's you. Sometimes it's yourself. Self-compassion.
If you don't have
is serious
compassion for
practice.
yourself, you ain't going to have it for anybody else.
Exactly. Yeah. Reminding me of RuPaul. If you can't love yourself, how the hell are you gonna love someone else? So, for real, take a look at self-compassion and see how maybe we can make a future talk on that, but you are not outside the circle of care and conscience and consideration.
Can I just say, not only you are not outside, but it starts with you. Like,
Yeah.
there can't be love if you're not there.
Exactly. Yep. Exactly. Well, I have nothing else to add myself at this particular juncture. What about you, Mushtaq?
I have chicken stir fry to add. So I'm going
Right.
to switch us back over to the gallery view,
Yeah.
the Brady Bunch mode.
Thank you so much for joining us, everyone. Thank you for sharing and caring. Thank you for sharing and caring. But in seriousness, this is one of, in some ways, it's one of the hardest things about this work is learning how to love, not just other, mysterious, magical other, but self. And also realizing that there really is not a distinction between the two. That's kind of the advanced stage of all this. But when you get it, you get it. You feel it. And most importantly, you do it. So we can leave it at that. All right, everyone. So we can wave to each other.
Thank you,
Everyone watching
everybody.
on the replay. We'll see you guys next week. Take care.
Take
Bye.
care.